This is a response to LCC 402's comment to me in a debate we are having. Unfortunately, the response is too long to fit into a comment, so I'm putting it as a video instead. I've highlighted the first sentence of the comment, and for you it has to do with junk DNA, and that's what I'm going to deal with first. In fact, I'm going to deal with it right now. You see this? This look familiar, LCC? That's pretty much exactly what you said. Here's the source. Here's the response. And I'm going to read the response to you just so I know you won't ignore it. It has long been known that some known encoding DNA has important functions, and this was known even before the phrase junk DNA was coined. However, there is good evidence that much DNA has no function. Sections of DNA can be cut out or replaced with randomized sequences with no apparent effect on the organism. There is also a citation for this. We'll get to that later. Some sections of DNA are corrupted copies of functional coding DNA, but mutations in them, such as stop codons early in the sequence, show that they cannot have retained the same function as the coding copy. The fugu fish has a genome that is about 1/3 as large as its close relatives, and mutations in functional regions of DNA show evidence of selection. Non-silent changes occur less often than one would expect by chance. In other sections of DNA, there is no evidence that any changes are selected against. There's a link at the bottom for further reading, and there is also a reference to correlate the source here. That reference is from the scientific journal Nature. There's also some further reading that links to the website used by the scientific journal Nature, and a paper on that website having to do with genomes, as well as a DNA glossary, which requires registration. The second thing you say is that you've mentioned evidence for design repeatedly. Yes, you have mentioned evidence for design repeatedly. You have repeatedly mentioned that there is evidence for design. The only actual evidence you have attempted to provide is the genetic code. I pointed out junk DNA, you brought up the canard about junk DNA, I refuted it. Next question, or rather next point. And this is really where I start to get pissed off. We're going to you say, can you please stop projecting your red herring and back up your assumption of naturalism? We're going to get to the projecting part later. Right now I want to deal with this so-called assumption of naturalism. Or rather, your lack of willingness to admit that you are assuming a deity. Because every time I ask you to back up your assumption that there is a deity or designer, you have refused, and instead asked me to back up my assumption of naturalism, as though you can assume a deity and get off scot-free with it without providing any evidence, yet I can't even try to explain things because I am assuming naturalism, which somehow makes my arguments invalid. Unfortunately, to assume a naturalistic process requires only assuming that the universe exists and that we can learn something about it. Naturalistic processes require nothing but the universe and everything within it to exist, because without the universe, the processes themselves cannot be carried out. But if the universe exists, then of course naturalistic processes can be carried out, because the universe is nature. It includes nature. Nature is within the universe and is explainable by evidence observable in the universe without the invocation of any secondary assumptions, such as that of a deity or a designer. Now let's go back up to your claims of projecting. This conveniently only came up after I had pointed out that you were taking all of your shortcomings, ignoring them, acting as if I had them, and then trying to call me on them, also known as projecting. You then projected my claim of projecting, which is extremely weird. You took my claim of projecting, ignored it, and then acted as if I was somehow projecting, but you conveniently did this only after I brought up the fact that you were projecting. Funny, huh? You're only claiming that I'm projecting because I claim that you are projecting. Wouldn't that be evidence for you projecting because you are projecting a claim I've made that you are projecting things onto me? I know that sounds weird, but it is extremely convoluted to explain in words. You are projecting the fact that you are projecting. And I cannot believe you are doing this, but at the same time I can, because creationists have a very, very long history of intellectual dishonesty, and probably an equally long history of projecting in that they do such things as you are doing right now, LCC. I do not know who you are attempting to convince. Rest assured that if you are attempting to convince me, it is not working. You will not convince me with baseless assumptions, and you will most certainly not convince me by ignoring your own assumptions and acting as if you have every right to make assumptions, yet I have no right to make assumptions that do not even need to be made, because as we are both making them. I assume the universe exists. You assume the universe exists. I am presuming, because we are debating this. I assume we can learn something about the universe, and so do you, because you are saying that we were designed, which would be learning something about the universe. I do not assume that there is a deity or designer. You do. So that's an assumption you've got to back up, because there is no evidence for a deity or designer, and in fact every single naturalistic explanation in our model we have for the universe works perfectly fine without invoking a deity or designer. So, back it up. Why must there be a deity or designer? Provide the evidence that you have still not provided. Or, please, shut up.